We are still in Greece. Hopefully, by the end of the day, we'll get to a different country, different continent even. All right, well, no, I guess it's not a different continent, but it's a different country. So we have been at Lefkandi, and we've been at Nicoria, and we've been at Athens, and currently we are on the island of Andros. Andros is the name of the island, and the site is Zagora. The name of the site is Zagora. The name of the island is Andros. The name of the country is Greece. Zagora, Andros, Greece. We are there because there is something fantastic, which is a village, a whole settlement of this mysterious Dark Age geometric period. Dark Age geometric being two names for the same era. 10th, 9th, 8th centuries BCE. You have that little chart? You know that little chart that I told you guys to make last time? You have that? So at the beginning of class every day, here's what you ought to be doing. You ought to have that little chart out, and you should be saying, oh, let's see, I got some blank boxes here, but I'm going to be looking to fill it in here, here, and here, and I'm going to be thinking that I need to know this date and this type of material and yada, yada. Okay? So that you have it in your head what you're after. So here we are at Zagora, and on this headland is the village, which we started to look at last time. This is the area that's been excavated. Certainly it was larger than the excavated area that we have, but this is what we've got. And some of you folks commented astutely on the densely built up settlement. So houses all together, bonded walls, party walls, meaning that the whole thing was planned and went up at once. Now, planned not in the sense that you've got sort of regular grid of blocks, but planned in the sense that this community together decided to build. It's not a kind of each man for himself thing, like if you and a lot of buddies go to a campsite and everybody has their own tent and you each pitch your own tent in whatever spot suits you. That is the setup of the village of Nicoria in Messenia, where there was lots of single room buildings. Here it's not like that. Not only were the houses built all together, but every house was pretty well fitted out. Each house had 3 rooms for the most part, a courtyard where animals and people could hang out, a little pen for the animals, storage, and living space. And everybody had their own probably water storage. You see the reconstruction drawing here of benches into which these large pithoi, simply meaning big jars, were inserted like this one that you see here. All right, and this is where we got to at the end of the hour last time. Inside each of the houses, cooking vessels telling us most simply and obviously that people were living here. They were living here and cooking here, and they were doing other stuff too. They were spinning, for one thing, because there are these spindle whorls. Now for the question that some people desperately want to know, which is, what is the date? How do we actually know what the date is of Zagora? And here's the evidence right before you. Now you know. All is clear. What's this date? Oh, learning right before my eyes. I love that so much. What's the date of this? What is this? If you have to put a label on that, what are you going to call it? You with the cap with the M on. It cannot be protogeometric. Why not? Why is that not protogeometric? What about this? What is this? It's a distinguishable figure. Is that what you were going to say? You would be correct. It is a distinguishable figure, and we never see distinguishable figures or even undistinguishable figures on protogeometric, so it can't be that. So try again. A little earlier. Middle. Middle, why? Because it's mostly just geometric, just as one little panel figure. But how about this? What's the date of this? What do you think? Really? What kind of decoration is this? Yes. And what's this? What kind of figure? A bird? A horse?
Looks like a warrior.
It does look like a warrior. It looks like a little stick figure warrior carrying a shield. So it's human. When do humans start appearing on geometric pots? When? Late, yes. There are not that many possibilities left. Late geometric. So, what's the date of this again? 10th or 9th, actually, because it's early geometric. And the date of middle geometric? Got your little chart out? You might want to write this on that little chart of yours. Yeah, this is all Zagora. Date? Yes.
800 to 750 BCE.
So, first half of the 8th century. And the date of this? 750 to 700. So, 9th and 8th century. The whole 9th century is early geometric. Middle geometric is the first half of the 8th. Late geometric is second half of the 8th. All right? All of this is pottery found at Zagora. This comes from a cemetery on the outskirts of the town. And that is how we know the dates of this settlement. The settlement had this feature, which is a fortification wall running along the opening of the headland, preventing just any old person from wandering in. There was only one access point right there, a gate, which you see here in this adorable reconstruction with these cute little geometric warrior stick figure guys hanging out on the top of the bastion. Gotta love them. Looking for enemy approaching in the other direction with their tiny little single eyes looking off. So the wall is 140 meters long. It's very substantial. It's made out of the local stone, which is schist and marble, which is stone that fragments into layers. So it's not ashlar masonry. It's not worked stone in particular. It's just built up from the local field stones, but it's a very substantial wall, again, with just this single entry. It would not only keep any possible enemies out, and it's a little hard to know exactly what enemies these people would be worried about. First of all, they're on an island. Second of all, there aren't that many people living on this island. It's one of very few villages at the time on the island. It could be to keep animals in. It could be just sort of general protection on the inside as well. But it's a pretty substantial wall, and this bastion that's built right by the gate, which juts out about 5 meters, suggests that there's defensive purpose also to this construction. And what does the fact of the wall tell you about the character of this society beyond the fact that they might have been worried about something? The fact of the wall. You. White jacket, middle of the room. The fact of the wall, what do you think? Besides the fact that probably means that some people were worried about some things. What does it tell you about the character of this little society? Yeah, besides that. Person next to you. What do you think? Isolating, protective, worried. John? They were focused on it? I don't know about focus. I mean, all right, they have some interest in defense. But beyond that, this tells you something else besides that.
It could possibly be kind of, not necessarily that they had enemies, but kind of like tradition to fortify the village a little bit. I think possibly a sign of pride or strength of the village.
A sign of pride or strength. That's actually a pretty interesting idea. What else? Could it be that they were really important people, not really sure where they would be living, but so what? Why would a wall necessarily tell you that? Agricultural. Why would a wall tell you that?
Because if they didn't have a wall, they'd probably have, or maybe even if they had a wall, they would water trade with someone else. They didn't have that.
You know what you guys are all doing? You're starting to like make stuff up. You're about 4 steps away from just this fact. I just want one little step off of the fact that there is this big defensive wall way in the back. They what? They value their society, meaning in the sense that they want to protect it. I want to know what it is about this society. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're private. Yeah.
We infer that they're skilled builders.
We could. Skilled builders. That was the point down here. Yep, back there. Yeah, he didn't really need any wealth to build it. It's just the local stone.
They were substantial enough society that they would have even required a wall?
They were substantial enough that they could have even required a wall. Well, I mean, I don't know. What are you really saying? I just want to know, what's the character of this group? Think about the other village we've seen. The other village we've seen is Nicoria. There was nothing like this there. By that, I mean, yes, there was no wall. There was nothing like that in the sense that there was no wall. But there was also nothing like this in another larger sense. That by building a wall, you get the sense of a community, and that it takes a community to build a wall. It doesn't take a bunch of individual people. It takes a community. It takes individuals who all have the same goal and plan and are willing to work together to do that. This is not for one person. This is for everybody. That's different. That's different than Nicoria. There is one structure you can see here which is distinct and not associated with any other structure. It's on its own. It's more or less centrally situated, like Unit 4.1, for example, at Nicoria. Here is a detail of the structure. The drawing is not incorrect. The drawing is accurate, which is to say, this, which is a raised, built stone structure on which there was burning found, so that you could call it a hearth if you wanted to. And there were some posts around it that could have helped hold up a roof. This must have been the first thing built, and this structure later built around it, because the structure that is built around this, first of all, isn't centered on it. It's off by about 1/2 meter. And second of all, the sides of this raised stone platform are not parallel to the sides of this. So they might have been good enough to build a wall, but they weren't so very careful about how they built this later structure. 2 columns decorate the entranceway. And inside was found by the excavators a pit. And inside the pit were found most of the metal finds that come from the site, including some iron knives and spits. And in addition, there was quite a lot of animal bone found in this pit. And the animal bone was very interesting. There were 274 animal bones, and most of them fell into one of 2 categories. One category was 2 to 3 month old piglets, and the other category was 6 month old about lambs. Those were the 2 categories that were found in here. Otherwise, nothing else was found in here. What is it? Quick, talk to the person next to you and decide. What is it? What is this thing? You got nobody to talk to. Turn around and talk to the person behind you. What are you doing all the way back there? You should move up.
And there was people here, and then they moved.
Nicoria. Yes, that's a good point. All right, what is it? It's a megaron. It's a megaron. Why? It's got a hearth thing, and it's got the entrance. It's even got the 2 posts. A megaron. Whoa, blast from the past. Yes, a megaron? And what is a megaron exactly? I mean in terms of function. If you say it's a megaron, what are you actually saying? Who raised their hand? Raise your hand if it's a megaron. Come clean. All right, so what are you actually saying when you say it's a megaron? Mm-hmm.
Like the building itself or its function?
Are you willing to call this a megaron? Because if you're willing to call it a megaron, you mean something by that term. What do you mean? So you mean, in other words, by megaron, that's purely descriptive. It's just, that's the shape, and it's got the parts of a megaron. But as you're going to use the term, now, 500 years later, you got to mean something else in addition. So If you're talking about Megaron, what are you talking about? Raise your hands. It's a palace. Yeah? You go for it? It's a palace? Oh. Why not? Why not?
It may be like the center focus of the top, but it's not. It doesn't have like all the extra rooms. It's not as big as the palace of
What's this? What site is this? What building is this? Hey, somebody back there. What site is this? Yell it out. Thank you. All right. These look a lot alike. Would you have called this a palace? Say what?
relative to the rest of the town. Yeah.
Relative to the rest of the town, you would call it a palace?
Well, as you were saying, wealth is relative. So, like, compared to the living conditions of everyone else, it wasn't necessarily like giant, king's palace, but it acted as one, and it was kind of compared to the living, conditions of the rest of the village. I thought it could be considered one.
I go with you up until just the term. So compared to the rest of the houses at that village, compared to what was inside the rest of the houses at the village, this is, relatively speaking, palatial. But that's different than saying it's a palace. Because if you're saying a palace, you are actually saying something specific. There's a minimum daily requirement, sort of, for a palace. It has to be super big. It has to have lots of decoration. You have to have a throne room. I mean, you need a few odds and ends for it to really be a palace. Okay, so we don't need to call it a palace, but it's the big man's house, right? Is that what this is? So I assume that that's sort of what you mean. You don't really mean palace, but you mean the house of the most important person in the town. Yeah? Is that what this is? Whoa, wait, where'd everybody go? Because if you said Megaron, that's what you mean. What happened to you guys? The house of the most important person in the town. I've lost practically everybody. Why not? The piglets and the lambs are more like offerings. Well, there were offerings here. What was here? A stragoloi, yeah. So there were offerings here.
Did they find daily use items in the Zagora one?
Did the archaeologists find daily use items? You know, I show you those pictures of cooking pots, and you people are just thinking, why am I looking at this? This is not pretty, and it's not really interesting. Except that it tells us something. What does it tell us? Well, it tells us that people are living there. But we didn't find anything like that here. No cookingware vessels were found inside here. No spindle whorls. No objects of daily life. Could it be like a shrine? How come these look alike? Oh, do you hear yourselves? They might be the same shape, but it doesn't mean they're the same sort of building. It could be an important building, but for a completely different or a somewhat different purpose. Not that I really want to play any sort of gotcha game here, but I cannot resist pointing out to you folks how much you've now learned. Because how many of you said that Troy 6 and 7a and Mycenaean Greece had as an important similarity that they both had megara? Remember that? As if case closed. That was really vital. But these structures are extremely similar. And what that means is that the plan is extremely similar. It does not follow that they functioned the same way in their societies. So if nobody's living here and it's some sort of shrine, what do we make of the discrepancy in the metal finds? Barely any metal finds from the houses and almost everything here in the shrine, in the little temple with its little altar. Where did we find all the metal at Lefkandi? U with the N. Is that an N? M. U. Yes. Where did we find all the metal at Lefkandi? In tombs. Where do we find all the metal at Nicoria? In this house, Unit 4.1. Where do we find all the metal in Athens? In graves. What do all those have in common? You can't say they're graves because one of them's a house. Ah, gotcha. What do they all have in common? Think. Well, they're not all concentrated in one place because they're in all the graves in Athens and in all the, or lots of them. And well, I mean, in the excavation at Lefkandi, when each individual grave is excavated, there is metal inside every single grave. I mean, that's the excavation spot, and the metal is inside the graves. They were all... Yeah, metal is a symbol of wealth. Metal is a symbol of wealth. Well, there's metal here too. What did those three sites have in common? The metal, the character of the metal, the distribution of metal finds at Lefkandi, Nicoria, and Athens. We know that if there's metal, that it's a form of wealth. And so if you have graves with, or houses with metal objects, that's a sign of an upper class. I want to know what the distribution, that distribution has in common. Poor guy's out in the front. I never call on you. You just gonna ride on somebody's coattails here? You're just waiting for the answer? What? What do you think they have in common? Remember a question from question set 1? The second question from question set 1. What did I want to know about shaft graves and tholoi? What did I hear? Say it louder.
Individuals versus community.
Did you hear that? What do Lefkandi, Nicoria, and Athens have in common? What does the distribution of metal finds there tell you? Who's it for? I do not hear you.
Individuals.
How do you know it's for individuals? What are you saying when you say that? How do you know? How do you know? What makes you answer that way? What's having a bunch of metal in a grave? Why are you allowed to deduce that?
So it's from their life.
Yeah, because it goes with the person who's buried. They get to take it with them. That rich lady in Athens with the 50 pots and the fancy earrings with the pomegranate dangles, she took it with her. The warrior soldier with the sword wrapped around the shoulder of his amphora, he took it with him. He took it with him and he wrecked it so that nobody else would be able to use it. You can't dig it up and get it back. What's the difference between those three sites and this one? Formulate an intelligent answer. Talk to the person next to you. Go, quick. I'm going to call on you.
Okay.
What'd you say? What'd you say? Tell me. Yes. What do you think?
I will say it's for community.
I think you're right. Got it? Got it? All right. What is it? What's the difference? What's the difference between Zagora? What makes Zagora different than Lefkandi, Nicoria, or Athens?
We talked about how it focuses on community, which would be to bolster the fact that the wall also set a giant community sense of structure as opposed to the individual.
Thank you. Agree? Yes. Same sort of building, basically the same size, same situation in its setting. Yes.
Sorry, I just have a question. We were just talking about it, but
Mm-hmm.
why did the people bury their wealth with them? Or was there?
Why did people bury their wealth with them in the geometric period?
Yeah.
Why did people bury their wealth with them in the Mycenaean period? Why do people take a lot of money today and make an extremely lavish funerary monument instead of, supporting a charity? Why? And because the most important priority for any of those individuals is themselves. Well, we were going to have lots of conversation about this, but we just did. Now, we will move on. So, we've seen 4 different communities inhabited at the same time. Now, listen. One country, in modern terms. But it doesn't mean that everybody is on the same page. So here at Nicoria, you guys all deduced last time that this is a community of survivors from the Mycenaean era. And they live in much reduced circumstances, but in a small, pale facsimile version of the Bronze Age. They have one big man. That person is in charge of all the goods in the settlement, has all the prestige objects, hairpins, safety pins, rings, fragments of iron, whatever. And so it's a community organized around an individual, and that individual is in charge. These 2 communities also have powerful individuals, not one single one. The communities are pretty wealthy, and the upper classes keep what they have. We call it a community, but really it's a collection of people who live in one place. And one of the ways that the people in these 2 communities, the elites in these 2 communities, differentiate themselves is by channeling the past. These people are remnants from the past. These people, not necessarily, but they hear about it. They hear those great stories, and they look to associate themselves with those stories. These people who live on this little island in the Aegean are poor. Their community is very simple. There's nothing impressive here, not architecturally, not in terms of finds. No fancy gold jewelry, no imported ivory, figurines, no great big building and huge cremation burials. But they have a different idea about how to organize the way they live together. And we can tell that from the finds. Let's go here to Ephesus. Ephesus on the coast of modern-day Turkey. In the aftermath of the Bronze Age collapse, people from Greece moved, traveled out into the Aegean and settled in new places. All along the Asia Minor coast, that is the western coast of modern-day Turkey, settlements arose of Greek-speaking people, people who came from this region. Actually, some of those people, some of these fleeing Mycenaean Greeks, travel far south and, in fact, become, newsflash, the Sea Peoples. The Sea Peoples are the Mycenaeans. Who would have thought? If you take archaeology of Israel, then you can learn all about that. That's a whole separate class. That's just a tiny little promo. So there's Greek settlements now beginning in around the 11th century BCE up and down the coast, and there is a settlement here at Ephesus, which grows up. Ephesus actually grows up to be a huge ancient city, a great big city in the Roman era. It's the capital of the Roman province of Asia, so it's large and fantastic, and I encourage everybody to go visit it. This is all Roman. And at Ephesus was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. And that wonder was out here on the outskirts of the Roman city of Ephesus, a sanctuary to the deity Artemis. And the temple that was built in the 4th century BCE, so we're way not there yet. I need to set this up to explain why anybody was bothering to excavate here. Down in the 4th century BC, at the time of Alexander the Great, who we'll be getting to towards the end of the month, there was an enormous temple built here that was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, one of the largest temples ever. And these are, this is what the place looked like in when did he go there? 1869. 1869, J.T. Wood, who was a British railway engineer, came here to excavate one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus. And this is a drawing of the dilapidated state of the site. And this is what it looks like today if you go there. So talk about your anti-climax. This would be that. So there's really hardly anything to show for it. And one of the reasons that there's hardly anything to show for this great ancient temple is that this is actually a giant marsh with a very, very, very high water table. And everything is kind of waterlogged. And in parts of the year, it's actually just flooded. The site of Ephesus and the site of the Artemisium has been one of the projects of the government of the country of Austria. The Austrian Archaeological Society has been excavating at Ephesus for over 100 years. They've been doing a great job, and you have a little excerpt from the recent nice handbook that they put out in your course pack. So about 20 years ago, the Austrian archaeologists decided to go back here into the area of the Artemision, which is the sanctuary of Artemis at Ephesus, and with some heavy-duty equipment, pump out the water so that they could excavate in the center, the very center of the area that had been the later temple. And when they did that, this is what they found. Holy mackerel. So you can see from these folks standing around that, this is quite a sizable building. It's 13.5 by 6.5 meters, which puts it in the ballpark of the shrine at Nicoria and slightly larger than Unit 4.1, the shrine at Nicoria, the shrine at Zagora, and slightly larger than Unit 4.1 at Nicoria. It's made out of local stone for the most part, which is kind of cruddy. Local stone is chalk and not so nice. But there's some specialness. There were imported green slate stone that was carved into bases for columns. So these would have held the posts, the columns that would have adorned the front. And there were also columns that went around. So, and then there was an kind of altar or a podium on the inside, and there were little columns that went around that too. So, what's with all the columns? What do the columns do besides help to hold up the roof? You don't really have to have them. We've got lots of structures all over the place without columns. Why columns? Decoration. Why? Could it signify importance? It could.
It's like the White House and what is it, like the Lincoln Memorial and stuff here, all have columns in the front.
Right, what do columns do? Columns tell you this is an important place. Look, most people do not have a big colonnaded front on their porch. That would be a little much. You know that would be a little much. You'd be like, no, I don't think so. Why? Because columns signify something bigger than just a single individual and a single individual domicile. They signal something special. So that's what the columns do here. So the Austrian archaeologists found this structure. No signs of daily life, no cooking vessels, no spindle whorls, no anything like that. But down here in a little pocket, they found pretty glamorous objects. Solid gold fibulae, which are those safety pins, gold figurines, and ivory figurine. Let's see. She, gold figurine 2, is 9.5 centimeters high, so about this high. And tiny gold figurine, little lady, is 5.3 centimeters high. She is so cute. She is tiny. And she is 11.5 centimeters. So, very elaborate jewelry, exotic material, special subjects. Yes?
What exactly do they use the fibulae?
Well, I'm not sure that these fibulae were used for anything, but fibulae, not this glamorous, highly decorated and made out of gold. But fibulae, for example, fragments of fibulae have been found in graves in Athens and at Lefkandi, made out of bronze, are safety pins. So if you wrapped yourself up in some sort of cloak and then you want to hold it together, then you attach a fibula. At my excavation this summer, we found a completely intact fibula. I mean, you could still close it and open it. It was so cool. Okay, so where do you think the style, subject, know-how, etc. come from for this fabuloso stuff? The Assyrian Empire. Yes, indeed. So at Nimrud, for example, here we've seen this lady before. Here is an ivory bowl with lion's head. Look at this. Isn't that neat? How similar they are. Very, very neat. So this ivory bowl and this lady both come from Royal Grave 2 at Nimrud. Nimrud, Ephesus, Athens. Fast! What do these figurines have in common? Talk, make a list. Quick, quick.
When was the Zagora shrine from? What was the date?
What was the date?
Right at the beginning of the 8th century? You said it was a passage between the 8th and...
I said the 10th and the 8th. From the 10th to the 8th. 10th comes before the 8th. So we're in BCE. Okay, tell me something.
They're all women.
They're all women. Tell me something else. Next. Next person. They're all women. They're standing in a similar position. Something else. They all have some sort of hat thingamajig on their head. Something else. Their proportions are similar. Is that what you want to say? Barbie doll-like proportions. Yes. Something else. Next person in that row. These two are naked. This one is dressed. They do all have long hair. Ooh, you lucked out there. Next person in that row, something else. Well, why are they relatively similar in color? Say what? They're made out of the same stuff, which is? Back there. What are they made out of? Yes. Yes, they're all made out of ivory. So that's a whole bunch of stuff that they have in common. What do you think is the most significant difference? Chat. 30 seconds. Chat. Chat.
Can you tell me again where these three statues were located? I know one is in Ephesus.
Which one do you want to know?
Well, the other two.
This is Athens. This is Nimrud, which is in modern-day Kurdistan.
Okay.
What are the dates of these again?
They're all 8th century. Tell me a difference. The one in the middle has clothes on. Tell me another difference. Yeah.
Well, the one on the right has two people standing back to back, and they serve a functional purpose. It was part of the table leg or something.
Okay, so this one is different because she's clothed. This one is different because she was actually part of something bigger. She was part of a chair. Something else, another difference.
The one in the middle doesn't have as big a headdress on.
Tell me another difference.
We were talking about like how it's a lot less detailed than the other two, the one in the middle.
The one in the middle is more schematic. Tell me another difference. Somebody. Oh, I'm just going to smack you all. What have we been talking about here? What have we been talking about here? What is the magic word? Context. The magic word is context. We've been talking about context. What's the context of this figurine? It was in a grave. What's the context of this figurine? What's the context of this figurine? What's the most significant difference? What's the most significant difference? What about it? Learning. It's active. You guys got to be talking and thinking. You guys put your hands down. What is the most significant difference? Catherine? Religious context meaning what? So she is some sort of practical utility. Of course, it's impractical to go to all this additional time and trouble to carve a table leg out of a double-sided nude female figurine when you could just, make a dowel. Well, they all show wealth. So, yes, she's in a different context, and that context is she's not found in a grave. The context is, I put quotations here, religious. What do we mean when we say that? What do you mean she's for the community? Who did the community dedicate this object? Who got their hands on this object? A wealthy person. Who got their hands on this object? A wealthy person. Who got their hands on this object? A wealthy king. Wealthy individuals owned all of these. What did they do with them?
Isn't the fact that the two, like the one on the far left and the one on the far right are like completely individual people, whereas the one in the middle was found in like a temple or a shrine or whatever, or like a god, so it wasn't for like a specific person, or like people came to admire and like this god or Artemis or whoever.
So the person who gets their hands on this figurine at Ephesus, what is that person doing? Not taking it with him. Giving it to a deity, some sort of protective force for the good of the community. What happens in the Greek world between the 10th and the 8th centuries BCE in terms of its society? Can you actually not answer this question? Or are you just waiting for me to tell you? All the way in the back. Some people become communal, and what does that mean? There was social stratification and organization in Mycenae. And who was at the top? Who was at the top of the social pileup in Mycenaean Greece? Who was at the top? The king. Who was at the top in Nicoria?
The administrator.
Whoever is buried in that tumba. What did Nicoria? Whoever lived in Unit 4.1. Who was at the top in the 10th century BCE at Lefkandi? Whoever is buried in the tumba. Who's at the top in Athens in the 9th and the 8th centuries BCE? Who's at the top? As far as we can tell. Who's at the top of the social stratification pyramid in Athens in the geometric period? Yo! Folks, Who are they? Who are they? We have names for them? we probably do have names for them. We have those social classes, the uppermost of which is the Pentacosiomedimnoi, the 500 bushel a year folks. Who's at the top in Zagora? Who's at the top of the pyramid in Zagora? Well, then, what's that building? So who's at the top? A deity. Who's at the top at Ephesus?
Artemis.
What happens in Greece from the 10th to the 8th centuries BCE? What happens? People in various villages, not all, or not all at the same time, but some, start to worship, put their energy towards, put their wealth, whatever it may be, from an iron spit to an ivory figurine, not to a person, not to an individual, not to somebody who lives there among them. The community needs some other larger force. In the Bronze Age, it was a person. In the geometric period, it's no longer an individual. Now the organizing force at the top of the social pyramid, the personage to whom the community owes something and rallies around, the personage who protects them, gives them some sense of communal identity, is not a person anymore. It's a god or a goddess. It's a deity. So, put these in two pairs. Quick, put these in two pairs. Quick, 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 quick. Okay, Dr. Pepper, give me two pairs. Why? What did you call this? A dedicated temple? Are those the same thing? It is an individual. It is, but you really have to be careful with your words. A tomb and a temple aren't the same thing, and you know that perfectly well. They're really not the same thing. This is something dedicated to an individual. This is something dedicated to an individual inside the community, mortal, identifiable, recognizable by everybody else in the community here on earth. Not only that, but it is that community that rallies around both of the individuals that these structures represent. And that is obviously not the case with these structures here. You could say that these two are most similar. What would be the similarity between Lefkandi and Ephesus? Well, yeah, I guess so. Although, I mean, this is not some sort of continued shrine that receives offerings. You could say that these are the two most similar and these are the two most similar. What's the similarity between Nicoria and Zagora? I want the society, the settlement as an overall similarity. I'm not. These structures are just representative of them. What is the similarity between them?
Not only were they.
This is simple. You don't need to get complicated.
Oh, just two things. Number one, they were poor.
They were poor.
And number two, that they were not dedicated to one individual.
Well,
As the other two were.
this.
It was kind of an administrative center, and
But somebody lives here.
yeah, but it wasn't really dedicated to that person like a burial or a shrine to dedicate it completely.
It's a community organized around one big person.
Yes. But the
Yes.
community is also involved and does things there. And it's the
We don't have any evidence for that.
administrative.
We don't have any evidence that the community is all involved and does all sorts of stuff there that this person wouldn't want to have happen. Somebody actually lives here, some important person. But these are both poor places. These are both wealthy. When you are talking in your papers about important or salient or significant explanations, think. It's, in effect, a coincidence that these are both poor and these are both rich. It's not incorrect, but it doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't tell you anything else. But what each community, no matter what their resources, devotes themselves to, organizes themselves around, that tells you something about what they think. People can go from being rich to poor or the other way around. But how they organize themselves, that is a different kettle of fish. So we now have religion. Religion has entered the world of ancient Greece as an organizing social principle. People are living in communities, and in those communities, they're no longer being ruled by, under the thumb of, taking direction from an individual in their community. There's no longer one big man saying, this is how it's going to be. I'm going to settle this problem between you. I'm going to tell you what to do. If you don't have one big person in charge, you need something, because those deities, Artemis at the Artemisian in Ephesus, or whoever it is at Zagora, they don't talk too much. They don't come down and say, let me settle this problem between you. So you need something else. You need government. Government is the next thing that develops in the ancient world. Right on schedule, right after we find the evidence for religious life emerging in the 8th century with sanctuaries and offerings and altars. Shortly thereafter, we find evidence for government, and as you all know, there are lots of kinds of government. Lots of kinds of government, and government is something we learn about in two ways. One way is by what people write about their government. So, I don't know how many of you have read the United States Constitution, but I ask you the rhetorical question, is that all you need to know about the United States government? If you're an archaeologist 2,000 years in the future, is the Constitution all you need? Not by a long shot. You need to know how that document actually worked, and you need to know something else. You need to know how the people who promulgated it felt about it. You need to know if they supported it. You need to know if it's just words or if it's got any basis in reality. How people think about their government changes even if the government doesn't change. Case in point, here's how we thought about George, our guy, George. Here he is, in case you did not immediately recognize him. In the 19th century. Now, I think it is very, very safe to say that nobody would approve a painting like this today. This would not be the way we think about George. This is the way we think about George. Remember George? George has come back down to us. He has come down from on high to be a helper to us. Why? Because what kind of government do we have? We have a democracy, a representative democracy. And in a democracy, you do not have deities. So this is like some weird 19th century blip. But today, this is the way we think about the people who are in charge of us. They're like our buddies. You know what this is? You know what this is? Say what? I didn't hear you. It is. 2995 Lincoln Farm Road, Hodgeville, Kentucky. This is the cabin where our 16th president was born. Here it is today, enshrined in a museum to which scads of school kids are force marched every year, all the kids who live anywhere around Kentucky. I don't know how many of you folks grew up here in St. Paul. Both of my kids went to Fort Snelling every year that they were in school, every year. They were so sick of it that by 6th grade already they were saying, can I stay home from school today because we're going to Fort Snelling, which they called Fort Smelling. And they just hated it. They felt like they got nothing out of it. Why do we do this to our children? Why do we do this to you people? What's going on here? Why? What's important about it? This cruddy, old, cheap, little cabin. Are you kidding? What's important about this? Okay, he was born there. Everybody's born somewhere, for Pete's sake. Why put it in a museum?
Preserving our history.
Yeah. Do we do this with all the birthplaces of all the presidents? What is it about this? What does that tell us about us? What does that tell us about us? All the way in the back. We love this story. We love this story. This is us. Anybody can become president. The circumstances of your birth don't matter at all. How important is that? This is a coin newly minted in 2009. When an archaeologist 2,000 years in the future finds this, they're going to know just how sure it is that we value that belief that anybody could become president. Is it true? You don't have to have any money at all. You could be born in a log cabin. All right, so there might be a little space between our story and our reality. But there's no daylight between our ideal and how we represent it. And both of those tell you something about what we think about our form of government. Let's go to Rome, to which all roads lead. New country, new city, new column, new sheet of paper. This is question 2. We're starting work for question 2. We're done with question 1. You can all work on it over this weekend. You want a new sheet of paper. Column 1, Rome. Oh, everybody has a story. The Romans had 2 stories, because everybody knows the Romans are better. They are better than everybody. Most people have 1 story. The Romans had 2. Story number 1. There were these 2 young lads, Romulus and Remus. Their dad was the god Mars. Their mom was a young girl who was seduced by the god Mars. Good-looking fellow, not hard to imagine how this could have happened. And she happened to be the daughter of a king. Oh, what a coincidence. And she has a dalliance with Mars, and she gives birth to these twins. Now, there was just one problem. There had been some sort of prophecy that this young lady might bear children who would upset the apple cart of succession in her father's house, her father the king. So he took the twins and he put them in a little reed basket and he put them out in a field. Does this story sound familiar at all? No, probably not. That's probably just a coincidence. So anyway, the kids, the little twins, are found by a wolf who happens to be lactating. How lucky is that? And they, therefore, survive because they get to be nursed by the wolf. The twins are named Romulus and Remus. Romulus and Remus are discovered by an old shepherd. Ah, he says, looky here. Inside this bower, a wolf nursing 2 tiny children. And so Romulus and Remus grow up being raised by Faustulus, the shepherd. And when they get to be of majority age, one little town not big enough for the both of them, so they go to this collection of 7 hills by this river about 15 miles from the coast. Romulus settles on the Palatine. Remus settles on the Esquiline. What happens next, we'll find out next time. Have a good weekend.